Welcome to BunniPhish Crafts. I'm your host Heather, known as BunniPhish on Ravelry, Instagram, YouTube, and Patreon. Today is not Monday, Tuesday, the 19th of March, 2019, and this is episode 35. Yes, episode 35. Grab some sticks and string and come sit with me. How are you all? I am okay. It's springtime, which means, of course, that the weather can't get its act together, so it's up and down and up and down, and my sinuses are not happy about it. So there's like drainage into my throat, so I sound really pretty. That was a lot of personal information. We had such a good week. So at my kids' school, I can't remember if I said this last week. I don't know if I've mentioned it. Anyway, they had a family game night, and it was really, really fun. It was just an hour long. They had a bunch of games. They had a local game shop or something come to the school, and they had games set up, and they were all educational. And at the end, they had games that you could buy. Or, I mean, you didn't have to wait till the end. I just waited until the end so that my kids could try out a bunch of games and decide what they wanted. So, my game buying budget was small. There was at least one other game that I would have bought, but I didn't have it in the budget. So we got two games, and they are really, really fun educational games. This one, Zoom Cubes, everybody gets a set of dice, and then there are cards with prompts on them. And so you roll the dice, you keep the letters that you need to make the word for the prompt, and you can re-roll the other dice. So we played through probably 75% of the stack of prompts the first day that we got it. And it was a lot of fun. Becca was here last week, so she played with Gabriel and I think each of us, we did rounds of 10 cards. I think each of us won one round, so that was really good, especially because Gabriel was like, oh, you guys are so fast, you know so many words. I can't play this game, but then he won a round, so then he was like, oh, okay, maybe I can play this game. So that was really exciting, and Mara also really liked it. It was, I think, the first or second game that she sat down to play, and I think she'll start playing with us eventually. And then we played IC10, which is, you can see, a math game. So you get these little tiles that have sea life on one side, numbers on the other, and the idea is when you flip a tile, you see if it matches something else to make 10, and then you yell, I see 10, and the first person to yell it wins, and if two people yell at the same time, you're supposed to yell the equation that goes along with it. Whoever yells it first wins. That's not how we played it. I mean, we did play it with the IC10 person who said it first wins, but frequently we just let the kids take the win if they said it at the same time as a grown-up. And also, there is this little guy. It's a shark, and if you flip the shark tile, the options are you can either lose all of your tiles that you've collected, or you can lose just a set, because, you know, losing all of the tiles for a kid can be really upsetting. So we played it where the adults lost their whole stacks and the kids just lost a set. It was a lot of fun, and Mara is a cheater. She flips the tile toward herself so that nobody can see it, and then she says, I see 10, before anyone else can even see the tile. Cheater. We're working on it. We're working on her learning that. But it was a lot of fun. And then the other one was called, the other one I wanted was called Rush Hour, I think. And it comes with a little grid and cars that go on the grid, and a deck of cards that are like the starting point for the cars to be set up. And then your goal is to get the red car free from the pile up. And it's a puzzle game, and it looked really, really fun, but it was also almost as much as these two games put together, so I opted not to get that one. But my sister got it, so maybe I will go over there and play it. Maybe. We don't really go to her house that often though, so maybe next year I'll buy that one. Because it looks like a lot of fun, and Gabriel really liked it. And I think Mara would eventually get into it. But Gabriel's much more into puzzle games like I am. So anyway, random tangent right at the beginning. So at the beginning of the school year, I started technology off time an hour before bedtime, and it worked really well. And that time was used for, finishing homework and doing the nightly reading, cleaning up before bed, that sort of thing, so that everybody could unplug. And then the school year got busy, and I didn't want to be bothered by telling my kids turn off the technology. And then we got out of the habit. So yesterday I reinstated technology off, and we read a book. We read this book right here. Can I reach it from here? Oh, I can. Don't mind that string hanging down from my armpit. We started Ella Enchanted, which is one of my very favorite books ever. And it's one of my very favorite books that's child appropriate. So we are going to read this. Even if Gabriel doesn't want to read it, even if he doesn't want to finish it. I read it out loud last night. I read the first two chapters. I think I'm just going to read this one out loud, and he can, read his other books silently or to me. And it was really nice because we had a discussion about things that had happened in the book, and I really, really, really enjoyed that. Also, I listened to an audiobook called Bored and Brilliant by Manoush. I don't remember her last name. So I listened to the audiobook, and she read it, and it was fabulous. It was so good. Every time I got into the car, I just wanted to listen to that. I didn't listen to the radio the whole time I was listening to it. It was just so good. And it was all about unplugging and the importance of unplugging. And I feel like I really needed to be reminded of that because I tend to hibernate in the winter, and now it's springtime, and I want to do things that are not just curl up and watch a movie or something with my kids, although that's the plan tonight. Mara asked if we could have family movie night. So I will allow that because today is a long day, and we have handcraft club and then tutoring, and then by the time we get home it's time to dinner, and then there's not much time before bedtime. So I think we're going to watch a movie tonight. Very chatty this morning. So, administrative things. I would like to remind you that there is a coupon code for Cattails Yarns to purchase from Kat's shop. There is a link in the Ravelry group in the Enabler Alert thread. Go check that out. And then Earth Tones Girl. Oh no. I want to say her name is Denise. Pretty sure her name is Denise. Has the podcast, Earth Tones Girl podcast, maybe? I don't know. I've recently found her, started watching her, enjoy her stuff. I watched her entire Vlogmas last week because sometimes I really like to find people and I like to binge on their Vlogmas when it is not Vlogmas time. So it's just a really fun way to like keep up holiday spirit, especially when I'm feeling like, blah, it's been raining for 3 days and So yeah, I really enjoyed her Vlogmas. And she is doing a sock knitting knit along in her group, and she put out on her most recent podcast that she would love to have designers and indie dyers and stuff put up information about their own things on, it's called the Community Cork Board in her group. So I put a coupon code for my sock designs in there, and the code is ETG10, lowercase letters, all one thing. And if you put that in when you purchase sock patterns of mine through my Revelry store, you get 10% off. So I figured I'd share that with you, just in case, because I would give you guys all the coupon codes forever. Oh, while we're talking about that, I will be launching, hopefully today, tomorrow at the latest, the page for the Chaotic Neutral Mystery Knit Along shawl. The knitting on that is all finished. I have a few more ends to weave in, then I have to block it, and then I'll have finished measurements up, but I think I can put the page up without finished measurements. I'll just say coming soon. Yeah, so I'm super, super excited about that. So all of the information will be for sure up tomorrow. And then it will be available for pre-order, and it will be discounted a little bit before pre-order, or during pre-order before the knit along starts. And yeah, I've been enjoying seeing what people are choosing for that. You guys, I have an idea, and I don't know if this is a little ambitious or a great idea. So I am thinking that my shawl that I'm going to knit during the knit along period, thinking I want to make it out of hand spun, because we were talking in the Ravelry thread, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if it was a gradient, or if someone used a gradient? Well, I don't have a gradient, but I do have that skein of oh, Gourmet Stash that I spun. The black and white with different colors of Firestar. So I'm thinking of using that as my main color. And then spinning a new skein to make the secondary color, and then spinning another new skein to use as all of the contrast colors. So instead of changing the colors, I would just use one variegated spin for that, use a solid spin for the secondary color, and then use my kind of gradient for the main color. That means I would have to spin 2 new skeins in a little over a month. One of them I would probably do on my wheel, but I think the other one I would do on a drop spindle. Is this too ambitious? Is this the thing I could do? What do you think? Or should I just look into commercial yarn for my second sample? I think. I don't know. I'm pretty interested in that idea. So, finished objects. I'm wearing one. It does not have all of the ends woven in. In fact, it only has the ends where I attach the balls of yarn in the body of the sweater and the bottom of the sweater and the neckline. I had left, so left is, no, I didn't even weave in the neckline strand. That's still there. So I have to weave in the neckline, starting strand, and the underarm strands. They're not woven in yet, but I have worn this sweater twice into the world, once to work and once to the movies. So whatever. I love it. Look at how cute it is. Oh, it's so pretty. The casting on half the number of stitches and increasing worked really well for the neckline, because as you can see, it's a wide neckline, and I don't have a problem. Now I need to sit on my straps weird. Okay, much better. I don't have a problem with it falling off now. If I had cast on the full amount of stitches, I would have an issue. It would fall off. It wouldn't be cute. It would be kind of 1980s flash dance style. So that was a really good a really good modification that I did. Other than that, it is made out of wool fiend yarn in the Fangorn colorway. It's so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I can't stop looking at it, and I want to wear it all the time, but that's not practical because I work at a school during lunchtime. So the only reason I wore it on Friday was because it was Green Day at the school in observance of St. Patty's Day, and nobody was eating any sort of condiment with their food. It wasn't a condiment day. Otherwise, I would not have worn it because I very frequently end up with some sort of something on my shirt after going through 3 lunches with children. Um, I really like the way the sweater worked up. I really like the way the yarn worked up. I did the largest size in the pattern with smaller needles than recommended because I was using a thinner yarn. And that worked out really well. It fits very well. I did not use all of the yarn. I still have probably very close to a full skein, maybe a little over a full skein, but it's in 2 balls because I was alternating skeins. I don't remember off the top of my head how much yardage I used, but I super love it. And yeah, I couldn't recommend the pattern more for a beginning sweater knitter or someone who just wants a really simple sweater, which is what I wanted, because I could have easily thrown lace or cables or whatever into this sweater and it would have worked, but that's not what I wanted. I also finished the shorty socks in the contrasting colors. This color right here is unicorn poop, and this one is mermaid song, both dyed by cattails yarn. And last week I had about half of the unicorn poop sock to go. I was just at I had just run out of mermaid song for this sock. So I did end up using the blue Aja colorway from Cattails to finish up the toes. And for the mermaid, no, unicorn poop sock, I just had to do the very tippy tip of the toe because there was actually enough to get quite a bit through the toe of that skein. Yeah, so they are finished and they've been washed and blocked, and now they've been shown on the podcast, so now they can go into the basket. I am pretty excited about them. I used basically the Rose City Roller pattern, but my personalized version of it. US size 1, 2.25 millimeter needles, bamboo though, in 9-inch circulars, which gives me a different gauge than metal 9-inch circulars. I have one more finished object, but I don't have it here. Becca and I went to the yarn shop and picked up some yarn for a work in progress I'm going to show you in a minute. And also she picked out yarn for the finished object, and I picked up the needles I needed to finish the shawl. So she picked up yarn for me to make her fingerless mitts or mittens. I made her, I'll show you, Bella's mittens or something. They're based off of the mittens that Bella wears in the Twilight series in one of the movies. So I made this for her forever ago, and oh, that yarn is in the way. And I made it convertible, but she has since lost to the other mitten. So she asked if I could make a replacement, but or if I could make her a new pair, but not make it so long down the arms because it made it annoying to get the mitten off during or while she was throwing it on and off in between classes at college. So I said fine. I like long fingerless mitts because I put them on before I put my coat on, so it blocks the wind. But I guess if you were not, she doesn't really wear a coat very often. She wears a hoodie usually, so I could see how that would be annoying. So I made her this pair of fingerless mitts. It is the, I didn't write down the designer information or the pattern name. Okay, it's going to be linked for sure below, but I think it is the two at a time, just called two at a time mitts by, definitely by We Sheep or We Sheep Knits. I can't remember what the Ravelry store is called, but definitely by her. And it was a really, really quick, simple pattern, worked on US size 4 with Cascade 220 wave. The pattern calls for a larger needle size because the samples are made out of Aran weight yarn. I also increased the stitch count just by 2, just to give it a little more space. I don't think I needed to do that. I think I could have kept it the original needle size and been fine. But I also changed the amount of rows that I worked, or rounds / rows that I worked for each section of the mitts, because I was working with smaller needles, smaller yarn. And also I wanted the mitts in the picture are pretty small. They're like this big. I extended the top ribbing to come to just about here on the fingers, so it would be long enough that she could, you know, pull it over and fold her hands in if it was really, really cold outside, but also not so long that she wouldn't be able to use her fingers if she wanted to. And after thought, I added thumbs to it. I just crocheted them on because I didn't really want to knit them on. Crocheting is faster and less finicky if I need to make a change to it, you know, because you just rip it out one stitch at a time versus knitting where you can, you know, tink back or take out the needles, but then you have to redo it. It's, crocheting thumbs is fine, and she doesn't care. So yeah, that those are the mitts, and I think I'm going to be making another pair because when I got the kids back from Steve on Sunday, I gave him the mitts to give to Becca. And he was like, well, these are for who? For me, because purple is his favorite color. And I guess he wants some fingerless mitts, so I'm going to make him some fingerless mitts at some point using that pattern because it was really quick and easy and looks nice. And I probably won't put thumbs on his because I think that he will wear them at work when it's cold. So, works in progress. I'm currently knitting on a pair of vanilla socks. This is the first one. This is where I was last week, and I had, they're worked toe up, so I worked a lot on this sock, obviously. It's a 56 stitch sock, worked on 9-inch circulars, US size 1, 2.25 millimeter metal tips, and it is using Patton's Croy stripes. I don't have the ball band, so I don't know what this colorway is, but it should be linked on my Ravelry page. So first sock is finished. The second sock is about a little over a quarter of the way, maybe almost a third of the way through the first, through the, what is this? The foot. So this will be this. Obviously I didn't do stripe matching. I just pulled out of the ball, and where the stripes started, that's where they started. So they're not going to match stripe wise, but they will be the same for round count and everything. So yeah, that's what I'm working on as I'm talking to you. And then I have the golden ticket socks. here is the first one. I finished that. I was at the heel last week, right here at the heel. And while I was talking to you on the podcast, I decided I was going to rip back the heel. So I was actually a little further than this. But I didn't want to interrupt the stripe sequence on the sock because I liked the way it was working up. So I ripped back the heel, worked up the heel, worked the rest of the sock, and I said last week that I wanted to make pretty good progress on the second sock, and this isn't great progress, but it's not terrible. It is second sock. I am through the first bottom band section that is different than the rest of the body stitches, and I am halfway through the first pattern repeat of the main repeat of the sock. So it is going. I haven't really worked on it since probably Saturday. It'll go back in rotation after I finish my next work in progress. This is Premier Serenity's sock in the gray flannel colorway. Last week I was also talking about starting a mermaid. Well, I wasn't sure what I was going to make. I was going to make something for my niece, and I have started it. So, I have decided to make a mermaid, and her head is a little squished. Let's do a little work right now. Okay, much better. So her head is finished, limbs are finished, and I am working down the body. She will have a little bra top and hair, but I'm getting really close. My goal is to finish her by tomorrow because Kalisha of the Quirky Monday podcast is hosting a knit along called the Pisces Season Make Along, which ends tomorrow. And I think that she would fit into the knit along parameters. So I have started her. The yarn that I'm using is for this flesh color is, what is that called? Karen Simply Soft in the bone colorway because I had a ball in stash, but then I ran out of yarn because it was just a little remnant of a skein that I pulled out of a project bag for a different project. I'm making a log cabin blanket, though I haven't worked on it in a very long time. I do still plan on finishing it. It's not something that I want to frog or get rid of. But I just grabbed the yarn out of there because I didn't want to have to worry about going out and finding flesh colored yarn. Well, then I needed some more. And I went to Meijer because it's close and they carry Karen Simply Soft, but they didn't have the correct color. They had all sorts of other colors, but not the one I needed. So that was a little frustrating. I had to drive to Joann's, which is not super far away, but also not on the way to anything. So I got that. I just used button eyes for her eyeballs, and then I picked up this yarn from my local yarn shop. It is also Cascade Yarns 220 Superwash Wave, and it is blues and purples and greens. There was another skein of it. The wave colorways are yarns that have long color changes one ply at a time. So there was one that was like, they had a really, really green section, and that was the one that I was like, oh, that's really pretty. But the requested colors were purple and teal. So I didn't get the one with the big green stripe, even though that's the one that I liked. I got this one that was a lot more uniform. There's sections where it goes a little more green and a little more blue, but always purple. And when I do the hair, I will be using some remnants of Knit Picks Brava. This is purple. It always shows up reddish on the camera, but I promise it's purple. And then the rest of that, or not the rest, but the remnants from the fingerless mitts that I just made. And I'm hoping to finish this by tomorrow and then take a picture, maybe a video, and then send it off. So that it can be there in plenty of time for the birthday. Yeah, I think she's super cute. The pattern is really, really well written. I am using Blanca the Mermaid, which was written originally in Spanish. It is a free pattern on the blog La Calle de la Abuela, I think. So originally it was in Spanish. It's an English translation. I think that the English is done really well, even though right at the beginning of the blog post, the author apologizes for her poor English. It's really, really clear so far. All the terminology is excellent. And really, once you get into the pattern, it works up super, super quick. I ran out of yarn right around her collar bone area, and then so I picked up the yarn yesterday afternoon, finished all of the flesh, finished the tail, or got to where I am on the tail. So it works up really, really fast. Really good pattern. I'm liking it a lot so far. And I really like the way the hair looks in the pattern, so I'm looking forward to figuring out how to do that. I also started a new crochet project because I ran out of yarn for the sock, or not the sock, the mermaid, and I went stash diving to see if I could find any more of that yarn, and I couldn't, but I did find, oh, yarn's caught on the zipper. Hate when that happens. 5 balls of this purple yarn. This is Bernat Softy Chunky in the deep mauve colorway. And this is the yarn that is called for the Aura pullover. I made the white one last week for the 2-year-old. Well, 5 balls is 10 yards less than the recommended yardage for the size medium. So the adult size medium. Purple is my sister's favorite color. So I've started a sweater for my sister because I was thinking about making her one anyway after I made myself one, but then this yarn magically appeared in my acrylic stash. It's not super surprising. My sister got a bunch of yarn from a couple different people a year, maybe 2 years ago, and I pulled out things that I was like, okay, this could be useful, and then donated some things that I thought would be less useful. And then forgot about what I had because it all lives in a storage bin and I only go in when I need something. So this is the first ball, getting close to finishing, and I have this much crocheted. So it is crocheted from the bottom up the front, and then you do a little neck opening stuff, and then you work from the top to the back, and then you do the collar after. So I am not super, super far, but I also haven't been working on it a ton because it was my backup project for when I ran out of yarn on the mermaid. So I'm going to wait until I'm finished with the mermaid and probably another pair of socks before I pick this back up, but it works up super fast. This is like a day's worth of work and not even dedicated work. Obviously, I am using a US size N hook, which is what is called for in the pattern. Yeah, really enjoyable. Looking forward to finishing this sweater. Looking forward to knocking 5 balls of acrylic out of my stash. And then having a really awesome Christmas present for my sister because she doesn't know I'm making it. So I'm just going to give it to her at Christmas time. My hair is getting so long. It's almost warm enough out for me to cut it all off. That's my plan. It's okay. Like, my hair is nice for hair, but I'm looking forward to having no hair because then it will be much easier to deal with and not get zipped in zippers. So, of course, again, I didn't talk about my bags because I never do. This is a Mama C's Creation bag, and it comfortably fits 5 balls of chunky yarn and the sweater that's being worked. My mermaid is in the Mermaid Project bag from Hooked by Happenstance, and it did close before I added the stuffing to her head. But now it doesn't. It's a really good sock shawl, small shawl size. The socks, the vanilla socks that I'm working on are in this Hooked by Happenstance, probably an Oceans bag. Don't care. The one skein fits just fine in there. Did I even say my son's socks? The pattern is Golden Ticket by Lisa K. Ross. So that is in ZK bag by Silvershed USA. And I also started another new sock, because we went to the movies on Saturday. Oh my gosh, this is the sweetest thing ever for an introvert. So we didn't have the kids on Sunday. They were with their dad, and my boyfriend and I had planned to go out to a bar for St. Patty's Day because he likes to do those things, and he was bummed that he worked that night, so he couldn't go out for the night. And I was like, well, when you get off work, we can just go for breakfast at a bar because they all open super early on St. Patty's Day. And he was like, oh yeah, that'll be a great idea. So Saturday, he comes home and he was like, I was thinking, I know you hate big crowds, and a bar is going to be crowded even early in the morning. And if you would rather, we could go to a movie and lunch. Yes, a billion times I would rather go to movie and a lunch than a bar. Ever. So we went and we saw we saw How to Train Your Dragons 3 last week. This past week we saw Captain Marvel, which was really, really good. I liked it a lot. It also led to it led to a heated discussion about representation. Yeah, we had a big discussion about that after the movie. But I enjoyed the movie. However, I was pretty far in this sock right here. I was past the heel, and no, I wasn't past the heel. I was here. Never mind. I was confused about where I was. So I was here, and I knew that this to the heel was not going to be enough to get me through the movie because it's a 2-hour movie. So I quickly cast on this sock. And so I only had the toe at the movie. I did not do all of this at the movie. I did this at work. Most of this at work. So I had this as a backup, and I only ended up doing 3 rounds on this because I also took the Golden Ticket sock with me to work while we were waiting in the theater and while we were driving. And I actually ended up knitting on the sock until, I don't know, probably 20 minutes into the movie, because then I finished where I was in the pattern repeat. I finished the band, the top band, and then I stopped because I didn't know what type of ribbing it called for, if it was 1x1 or 2x2. I didn't have the pattern downloaded on my phone, so I just left it in the theater. And And then I worked on that sock, and then I started this sock. And then I worked the rest of the foot of this sock at school yesterday. I must have done some of this at some other point during the week because there's no way that I did all of this in the 2 hours that I was at work. And then I came back and did the heel so that it would be ready to go back to work. This is again a vanilla sock, toe up. It is 60 stitches on US size 1 bamboo needles because this is Premier Serenity sock and it is a finer yarn than the Patton's Croy socks. And the reason why I cast on this second sock instead of casting on this, or this first sock instead of this second sock, is because they're worked on different types of needles. And since that affects my gauge, I didn't want to make the second sock of this tighter. So yeah, it just, I cast on the sock instead. And both of these are now cast on. I have the toe of the second sock worked completely, so it will be ready to be worked at school immediately. But it's down in the bag by my feet, so I'm not going to dig for it. Okay, that is everything that I have actually worked on. I do kind of have a project that I want to start because I need another blanket, like I need a hole in the head. However, Kendra over at Hooked by Happenstance is making a reading shawl, and I don't wear shawls. I just don't. Very rarely. And I just made a shawl. So if I need a shawl, I have a shawl. I'll be making one in May. But I really, really like the idea. And I was talking to her and she was like, well, maybe you could make like reading socks. And that idea seemed okay, but I kind of want to make something that I would use while I'm, actually reading. So I think I am going to make a blanket. My idea is to use worsted weight acrylic yarn so that it's easy to wash. And I'm thinking that, well, let me tell you about Kendra's shawl really quick. So she has 4 different designations of book types that she's reading. I'm only going to use 3, I think. And so each time she finishes a book in that category, she adds a bit onto the shawl using that yarn. And she has a specific stitch pattern for each yarn. And it's just really cool. It's a really cool idea. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to make a blanket. I am not going to make my blanket as fancy as her shawl is. I have acrylic yarn in lots of different scrappy bits. I am thinking that I am going to use a purple or purple based yarn for nonfiction books that I physically read. And then probably blue or green, probably green for nonfiction books that I read. And then whichever other color I don't use, blue or green, that will be for audiobooks. Fiction, nonfiction, all audiobooks are just going to be clumped together. I usually listen to audiobooks as nonfiction, but every once in a while there's a fiction thrown in there. I don't want to have 4 categories, and I'm just not going to count my children's reading like Kendra does. I'm not going to count that. I think that I'm going to make granny squares using this worsted weight acrylic yarn and attach all of it. I still have probably 6 or 7 skeins of white yarn that were just given to me, acrylic, that I don't have a lot of use for white yarn. So I think I'm going to border each square in that and then do a continuous join for the blanket squares. And Kendra rates the books that she reads on a scale from 1 to 5, and then she puts a ridge kind of for each of those designations. What I'm thinking is I'm going to do 5 round granny squares, and I'll use the colorful yarn starting in the center, and then do as many rounds as I would give the book stars, and then whatever, like if it gets 5 out of 5, then it would be 5 rounds of the color. But if it's only like a 3-star book, then I would do 3 rounds in the color and then 2 rounds in the white. Those are my thoughts. I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to use a 5-star rating scale. I still have to figure out how many stars I want to rate out of. It might only be 4 or 3. I haven't decided. Because I really, really, really don't need another blanket project. But I really, really, really want to make it. So what do you think? Does that sound like too much, too over the top? Am I overcommitting myself to things I don't need to be committing myself to? Obviously. Yeah, let me know. Let me know your thoughts on that. The other part about that is Kendra does a little recording for every stripe that she makes where she talks about the book. I don't think I would do that. But I might add that in at the end of the podcast, because once upon a time I did have a what I'm reading section at the end of my podcast. And I kind of miss having that because I do enjoy when other podcasters talk about what books they're reading. So maybe I could do that at the end and talk about a square that I made once I finish a square. Yeah, I'm thinking I might do that. I'm also considering not just starting right now, because I journal a lot. I journal every day, in fact. In my journal, I set up my day with the date, and then I make a list of things that I want to accomplish that day, bullet journal style. And then if I feel like it, I write an entry at the end of the day, or more realistically the next morning, because I wake up an hour before I wake up my kids, so that I can have an hour to like reflect on things and get things out of my head. But sometimes if I have a lot going on in my brain, I write before bed. So I journal. And then at the end of the journal entry, I write down, I'm not always great about it, but I'm pretty good at writing down my book progress. So what I do is I make a little book icon, and then I write the title of the book or an abbreviation for the title if it's a really long book. For instance, First We Make the Beast Beautiful. That's just too many words to write all at once. So I abbreviated that as Beast in my notebook. So then I write the title, and then I write how many pages or what page I'm on versus how many pages are in the book. Fun fact, I think it's fun. When I was little, probably 9-ish, when I had to clean my room, the game that I made for myself was I would take an index card or something and put it on in the book that I was reading, and for every single thing that I picked up in my room, I could read one line of text. So I would pull down the index card after I cleaned so many things, and then read that chunk that I had unlocked for myself. And I was also obsessed with what percentage of the way through a book I was, and I would figure it out every night before I went to bed. So I'm still kind of obsessed with the percentage. I don't need to know the exact percent, just like general percent, but I write that all down. I also write down the day that I start and finish a book. So I'm thinking that I might go back to the beginning of 2019 and start squares for those books. I think that's going to be a thing. I'm going to hold off on it as long as I can, but I don't know how long I can hold off on it. Yes. I do think that I am not going to include, there was one book that I picked up from the library and I read probably 10 pages and I hated it. I just hated the writer's language. I hated it. I don't think I'm going to include that book in the blanket because I really want the blanket to be memories of things that I, for the most part, liked. I mean, there are definitely going to be things with lower star ratings. For instance, I'm listening to an audiobook right now that I keep zoning out on. I think it's the narrator's voice, but also like the voice quality. So it's very like it's like a grandpa telling a story, but if the heat is going, I can't necessarily hear everything he says because his volume is all over the place. In words, like not all of a sudden the volume will jump in the telling, but he uses a lot of volume difference in just in one word. So that's kind of frustrating. And I just don't particularly like how the book is saying what it's trying to say. I don't mind what the book is trying to say, but I don't like the way that it's going about it. So it's going to get a low star rating, but I'm still going to finish it. Yeah. Okay, that was a lot of stream of consciousness talk at you about this blanket that I might make. But let me know what you think about this blanket that I might make. I hope you made something fantastic with your sticks and string. I did not forget about Patreon, but I forgot about Patreon for the prize. Next week, I will do it. I'm sorry to those people who may have been looking for that this week. I noticed some people checked out Patreon. Super, super appreciate you. Thank you so much. It's just a really great way to help support the podcast because this takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to record and to edit and upload and be a part of the community is a lot of work, but also it helps defer costs for things like prizes. So I thank you guys super, super much for being patrons if you are, and if you're not, go check out my Patreon. Okay, I will see you guys next week. Bye!